Tottenham Hotspur coming off the back of an impressive 4-0 win in the Champions League against FC Copenhagen. A game where they were kind of flattering to deceive, took advantage of two goalkeeping mistakes, then of course got into 10 men, but then impressively get the job done with two goals in the final 30 minutes after going down to 10 men. Mickey van de Ven once again showed why he is just one of the most insane athletes in football and why people can think he maybe has potential to be one of the best centre-backs in the world. And Thomas Frank picked up another win in his first season in charge, and that's going to be the focus of this video, is Thomas Frank's ability to get the most out of this team. After the game on Saturday against Chelsea, where Spurs were awful, like it was a really bad performance from Spurs in that game. Chelsea should have won by more goals. The 1-0 scoreline kind of flattered Spurs from what they actually delivered in the game. But straight away, everyone was ready to jump on Frank and say, "This is maybe he's not going to be able to do this. He's not playing the Tottenham way." And you would think that Spurs were in the bottom half of the table, struggling like they were last year, when that just really isn't the case. They only suffered one defeat in their first 10 games of the year, which obviously after the struggles they had last year, other games they lost last year, that's obviously a great start under a new manager. Then, of course, it's been not so great the last 6 games, three defeats in their last 6. But this is a team that are really not very good right now. I think outside of their backline, I don't think any of their players you could really say they're definitely going to be part of this next great Tottenham wave. And that's why I think Spurs need to be accepting of where they're at right now and realise that Thomas Frank needs some time. It's always a big step up when you give opportunities to managers who have managed at a lower level, who are not always expected to win, and who are graded on how much they get out of their players, getting the most out of what they have. And that's Thomas Frank has been a part of that with Brentford, and he's done very well, and he's earned a chance to get this step up to Tottenham, who are expecting to win. But expecting to win right away is just overly ambitious for Tottenham right now. They have to expect to be better, expect to be more solid, expect to be a lot better than last year. But as long as they're in the European places, any of the European places at the end of this season, I think you have to accept that it's a successful year and you're going to move on with Thomas Frank as manager. This is like Thomas Frank has to completely kind of change his philosophy as a manager and his mindset. Sorry, not his philosophy. He has to change his mindset from going, we need to be solid, we need to be hard-nosed, we need to be tough to beat, and we need to take advantage of opponents' weaknesses, and change that to saying we need to dominate the ball and we need to win every single game. Like, that's a complete change of mindset from where he was at Brentford, and that's going to take some time to develop. It can't just happen. It can't just be like a switch. It just simply doesn't work like that. He's got to change that, and that's going to take some time, and that's why Spurs have to be patient, and hopefully they will be. Obviously, Daniel Levy, we know he's been sometimes too eager to pull the trigger on certain guys, but thankfully not all the performances have been amazing. At least the results are clouding it a little bit at least. But remember, the first 2 games of the year, obviously that Burnley result kind of flattered Spurs, don't get me wrong, but 3-0 win, obviously a great start, and then they go and silence City, they go and nullify City at the Etihad, win 2-0, and everyone's kind of like, oh, well, Spurs are here, this Spurs team is legit. Then they lose to Bournemouth, but it has never really gotten too bad. Yeah, there's been some disappointing results, especially at home. The Champions League, they've kind of flattered to deceive. But I think it's been fine. And I think from where they were to where they are now, I think they just have to be accepting and just be willing to take a backseat and be willing to accept that maybe at this stage, as much as they're a bigger club than the likes of your Bournemouths and your Brightons and those sort of teams, this is similar to a situation that Manchester United are in. They kind of got to accept that just being in the European places after the year that they have might be okay, and I think it needs to be accepted more at Spurs because their squad just really isn't up to code. As I mentioned earlier, outside of their backline, I do like the backline, especially like the starting guys, Porro, Romero, Van de Ven, and Jed Spence or Udogie, a left back like that. I think that's solid. But outside of that, I just do not believe in this team. Vicario, still a big question mark. I'm still not totally sold on him as a goalkeeper. But I think that's an area where they may not realize it until they are in a position to win games and he starts to cost them in big moments. That's when they'll maybe look and say, okay, we need to replace this guy. I love Joe Polina. I think that was a great signing, but obviously that's only in on loan. He's still been a little bit kind of in and out of the team, which I think is silly because he's whenever he does play, I think he makes such a big impact. But the rest of the midfielders, Bentancur, Sarr, Madison is obviously out, likely out for the whole year. We haven't seen Basuma yet either. But these guys, I just don't think they're fine. I just don't think they're great. And I think they're good squad players, but they shouldn't be starting for you week in, week out. Like Sarr gives it his all, has some great moments, but I think if you asked any Spurs fan, as much as you'd love the idea of him starting right now, if you said, should he be your starting midfielder in a year or two from now? I don't know how many would say yes. This Spurs team, it's just not very good right now in the midfield and attacking positions. They're in a weird position between having a significant group that are too young to really be able to kick on and develop right now, and then a group who just really probably aren't good enough to really help this team kick on. Obviously, they signed Mohamed Kudus in the summer, and he looks like he looks good in a Spurs shirt. You just want to hope that he starts to develop a little bit more of a goal threat. You hope that will come. We still haven't seen Kulusevski yet this year, who was one of the bright sparks for Spurs last year before going down with that injury. But then you start to wonder, how can they fit in all these guys into their forward line? I don't like any of their strikers, really. Colin Moani is obviously only a loan, so, I mean, they took a shot. I respect them taking a shot, but I'm like, what we've seen from him in PSG and Juventus just kind of huffs and puffs, and that's all we're seeing so far in the Spurs shirt. I really just don't think that he's really up to much. Richarlison, he's fine, but I'm sorry, if he's the guy leading your line, you're not going anywhere fast. Then you've got the likes of Johnson and Kudus on the wings, and Bergval and RG Gray, and they're going to play in those wide positions as well. They're still young guys. I still think they could come good, but it's going to be so difficult to see how they fit in all these guys. Is there a lineup that features Kulusevski, Xavi Simons, Brennan Johnson, and Kudus? I'm just not so sure, and I don't really like the idea of any of them consistently playing as like a false nine, that sort of position either. I know there's been difficulties for Spurs and there's been injuries, but I think you got to, if you take a step back, I think, and you look at their squad and you look at the teams that we believe are challenging for Champions League and believe should be getting Champions League places. Spurs are just a little bit lighter. They're a little bit younger. They're kind of in a semi-rebuild right now. This is not the same team that had potentially the best striker in the world in Harry Kane, potentially the best winger in the world in Heung-min Son. Like, it's just they're just not at that level anymore, and I think they just need to be willing to accept that. They've got some good young pieces, but they still need to build around them. I think it would be a good idea. We'll see how the rest of the season goes, but after the bright start he made and what he did at Fulham, I think finding a way to make the Joe Polina move permanent will be a smart move from them. But they need to invest in the midfield positions. There are some quality players out there. You look at Adam Morton at Crystal Palace, you look at Elliot Anderson, you look at Carlos Baliba. Now, other clubs are going to be in for them players. So the question is whether or not Spurs are going to want to pay up. But those are the couple of guys that they need to be looking at. And I guess they might have a bit of PTSD after signing Basuma from Brighton. So maybe Baliba might not be the one that they go for. But they need to invest. And as much as it's great that they've got these young pieces, they need to invest in more veteran players, guys closer to their prime that are ready to win now. And then they'll be able to take the next step. I think Thomas Frank is going to adapt to being a winning manager. I think he's going to be able to do that. But like I said before, you have to be given time to be able to do that. Like, I always go back to when Manchester United hired David Moyes after Sir Alex left. Yeah, I get it. Maybe he wasn't the first choice, and maybe he never would have really taken them on, but he needed time. Obviously, this is very different. Sir Alex was like everything to Manchester United, and Moyes was trying to come in to replace him, but he needs time to just take that level in terms of his own mindset of this is about winning all the time. I gotta like do this. I gotta be not worrying about being so compact. I gotta be willing to be more progressive and find a way to get the best out of these guys playing my way, but in a different way. Like it takes a while for that to change. And I think Spurs need to be patient. They weren't patient when Nuno Espirito Santo. That was obviously that was results and performances weren't going very well, so that was fair that they maybe dismissed him. And they haven't been patient with other managers, and I think now is the time that they need to be patient. And I think they deserve, like Thomas Frank deserves that, because the squad that he's working with, I don't think it's as good as people think, and I don't think it's as good as maybe Spurs think, and maybe some pundits as well think. Spurs' squad in terms of the attacking and midfield options is pretty mid-table, lower end of like the outside. Like it's not Champions League level players that they have. Even though obviously I know that they are playing in the Champions League, but again, like I said, they've been pretty uninspiring without facing any real tests in that competition so far. Got away with it in the first game against Villarreal. Got away with it away against Bodo Glimt. Drew away to Monaco, and obviously they were good today, but that Copenhagen team was pretty average. So I think we need to take a step back and stop being so critical of Thomas Frank. Give him time to grow into the role. We always like to give players time when they're young and they're coming to this new club. We always like to give them a bit of a grace period, where we don't really like to do that with managers. And I think if Spurs are trying to turn over a new leaf after Daniel Levy's leaving the club, this is the first way of showing it, by being patient with Frank and giving him time to grow into the role, and giving him at least a couple of windows to really improve this squad. And now the question is, it's always going to be the question with Spurs, are they going to be willing to invest? We never really know on that one, but Frank has got qualities as a manager. He just needs time to grow into the mindset of being at a winning club, because that's going to take some time. Spurs, the ball's in your court. What are you going to do?